Hi everyone, and today I'm going to tell you a story about storytellers. That's quite a common thing, isn't it? Stories about storytellers. I mean, even if we just think about films, we can think about films from, I don't know, Barfly to Ed Wood. They're all films about storytellers because poets and filmmakers are storytellers. What exactly is a storyteller and who are storytellers? Well, I don't think we need to be too exact about our definition. I mean, maybe mathematicians and scientists are even storytellers. Maybe not. In some ways, it doesn't really matter because I think it's pretty clear that there are a lot of storytellers around and there are a lot of stories, and we get a lot of our information from those storytellers. Musician storytellers, quite often at least, sometimes. Or at least they are. Well, they are quite often. Painters, maybe. Probably. Sometimes. Now, the kind of information we get from storytellers is of all kinds. Think about nature documentaries or documentaries about astrophysics, about galaxies, about the Big Bang. Or we can have stories about historical personages, Napoleon perhaps. Jesus of Nazareth, if he was a real historical figure, in search of a real historical Jesus perhaps. And novels as well, stories, and even novels which are quite often fanciful or not based on any particular historical person or persons, gives us information, maybe information about what kind of relationships between people are possible. So we get a lot of information from storytellers, don't we?
We do indeed.
And one reason that we are able to get so much information is because storytellers quite often are masters or mistresses, whatever you want to say, of their craft. They're very good at it. They're good at communication, at narrative, at presentation. Maybe their production values are sort of slightly higher than in this particular story about storytellers. But in any case, whether it be on a page, whether it be as filmmakers, whether it be in any of the other forms of storytelling that I've sort of gestured at, there's certainly a sense in which storytellers are good at their craft. And this not only makes them important, but also they know that they're important, you know. Storytellers are quite often aware of how important they are, and I mean, to some extent this is sort of what happens in any endeavour, you know. I mean, jet pilots often think of themselves as guardians of the public safety, and maybe they are. Of course, it's possible to overestimate how important your profession is. I mean, we might not need as many jets as flying as we've currently got, but nevertheless, everyone recognises the value of what they're doing, and that's one reason why they do it. Now, when it comes to storytellers, there's certainly a propensity to talk about storytelling as sometimes it's all important, you know. I mean, Joseph Campbell, for instance, the writer on myth, he talks about storytelling as intrinsic to human being, as indispensable, as essential, and something that we as human beings have always had and always will have. Or the French post-structuralists who wrote about how we should understand the world in terms of language and power. They thought there was nothing else to be explained or capable of doing any explanation but stories, and there was nothing else. There was no outside the text, no outside the story. So storytellers, because they're good at their craft, and they can have access to theories that maybe pat themselves on the back a bit, there's all this kind of danger with storytellers. And that's what I'm kind of here to warn you about, that like storytellers can often con you that they're more important than they really are. And that's what I'm here to suggest you keep a wary eye out for. Because there's not just stories. You don't have to have stories. People have to do things, right? I mean, Goethe says, in the beginning was the deed. And if we're to reflect on how what we're doing was done well or done badly, well, we have to have done it in the first place. So as much as you might want to have stories about storytellers, as much as storytellers have their role and are important, I think as well, a word of warning. There's a lot of people out there in this world, especially in the world of high information flow, of all sorts of forms of communication, easily transmitted digitally on the internet, maybe soon in virtual reality and so on. But we don't want to also forget that we have to do things as well, and that we need stories about how we do things. We need stories to tell us how to do things well and badly, how to plant crops or whatever else. But we also need to be doing the doing. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'll just leave you with that thought. If you're ever listening to a story and it sounds like the storytellers kind of two up themselves about being a storyteller, just exercise perhaps a degree of skepticism. Thank you very much. I don't know. What do you reckon?